Hey fam, welcome back. Tisha here, back with another Big Love Season 2 review. This one had a lot going on. If there's something, because I left out some things, if there's something that I left out that you want to talk about, feel free to put it down below. Let us begin. For at least the fifth time since the shooting 4 days ago, a family spokesperson came forward to reassure the good people of Utah that all is well with the stricken patriarch. After a third surgery on the 78-year-old polygamist came a statement from the hospital suggesting perhaps not so fast. As I'm hearing this, I'm wondering, are they even allowed to reveal this much information regarding what's happened to Roman? But I guess because it's not completely going into detail, there's nothing wrong here. But it's kind of teetering for me. Hold on a second. We have breaking news. This is an opportunity, Madeline, to come together for a good man. Our prophet was struck 3 times point blank. Somebody wanted him dead. As she's saying this, we see Bill looking at Nikki right when she says somebody wanted him dead, which makes me wonder if that someone is Bill, because Bill set all of this into motion. Understand, a lot of what we're seeing is because of Bill. But someone even greater wants him alive. So the episode begins with that news footage, and Nikki's watching it. She's depressed and hurt and confused because the last words that she had with her mother was she was disowned, and she now knows that her father was targeted by 2 women and he was attacked in the street. So she's in the bed finding out more from the news than she is from her actual community because nobody is talking to her. She's trying to wrap her mind around the violence that has taken place to her father. Her sons are jumping all over the bed. Bill is getting ready. And as she's going through this, he of all people promises to keep them safe. But how is he supposed to keep them safe when he himself knows that Hollis and Selma are in the wind? The people that he double-crossed are in the wind somewhere last seen in Mexico. And they know where his family lives. I'm just wondering at what point Nikki is going to find out that her husband is in the center of all of this, because he's constantly causing conflict and issues for the people around him. So Bill goes from comforting her to making it about himself. He acts like this is about his family, but it's about him. The lady is mourning, and Bill takes this opportunity to tell Nikki that there's this company that he wants to buy that could protect them. Way to use certain words in order to get what you want, Bill. He tells her it involves gambling. And she says, if you say we need to do it, then I trust you. Because she later tells Barb, the man is the head of the house. He should feel lifted up and not controlled. I don't know if the attempted murder of her father has made her like this, or if she's just always willing to be blindly led by her husband. But this very much so is what she's been taught. I was just surprised at how quickly she was willing to go along with this. Bill says, I'm worried Barb, won't quite, be as understanding. She won't be quite as understanding, So, I'm going to need your help with her. Nikki's like, you want me to work on Margie too? He says, gee, if you could. Everyone in this family is always on some type of agenda. Because during this episode, we see Barb pushing hers, not just onto Margie with the vote, but with Sarah and even Heather's father. They are all willing at various points to toe the line in order to get their way. It often seems to me, out of the adults, like Margie is the only one who's not pushing an agenda. She's being open and honest about her feelings. And I think we kind of see her come into herself a little bit towards the end part of this episode. So Bill has Nikki, and now he's focused on getting the other two ladies to agree. But Nikki isn't concerned because, as she points out throughout the episode, she can get Margie. Her and Margie often tend to vote the same way. At Home Plus, Peg is pissed because she now knows about Weaver Gaming. She doesn't want things to be the way that they were as a kid with the different scams and schemes. She doesn't want to have to hide or not be honest about her job. And she tells Bill this as she walks out. You see, unlike Bill, Don isn't trying to, Bill's words, create an atmosphere for acceptance. He's not playing in his wives' faces. He's being honest with them because, in my opinion, Don is a good guy. I respect Don for now because I don't know what he's going to do if he's going to turn into a different guy. But for now, I respect the way Don maneuvers because he's not constantly playing games like Bill. I don't understand how he's even friends with Bill. Somebody like Bill would get on my nerves because it seems like Don is always being forced to put up with his mess and then to try to clean it up. What he's doing continues to put his family at risk. Hello, Bill, or should we call you Bald Eagle? Barb and Bill in this episode, to me, is a constant push and pull. It's very much so giving Mary and Cody vibes with the passive aggressiveness between the both of them, and each one of them seeming to want to have the upper hand as they work on the wives to make sure that the vote goes their way. Bill is working on getting Barb and Margie to agree. So he starts with Barb by taking her golfing. Probably to, let me quote again, Bill, set the atmosphere. So Barb is talking about feeling guilty about going golfing because Nikki's at home mourning. But I don't buy it. Bill points out how, life has to go on and how he felt it would be good for Barb to get out. Barb to get out or Nikki to get out? Because I would think that Nikki would be the one that you should get out to take her mind off of things. But at this point, Nikki's grief isn't his concern, or her concern for her father isn't his concern. His concern is getting the wives to say and do what he wants them to do. So he tells her in a nice roundabout way that there's this business venture in the entertainment industry that he's kind of thinking about, that people love it. It's video gaming machines, like cars and poker. Give it to me straight. Stop with the creative wordplay. If I was his wife, that's what I would want. As soon as Barb hears poker, you see her turn to look at him because he's behind her like he's crazy. She wants to know what the others think. But what I think she really wanted to know was if she was the first to know and what the others think. Because she smirks when he tells her that she was the first one. And I laughed at the time because, lady, what are you smirking for? You're not the first one. Nikki is. At the hospital, Roman is going through it. He is delusional. He's thrashing around. He's bleeding from one of his wounds. He has a fever of 106 and an infection. And he's singing about swiping the itch with a magic stick. Put a B in front of it. I don't know if it's a real song, but his wife is appalled. She's like, I don't know where he got that music from. He wouldn't do that. Oh, he's doing it now. I said, the prophet is a mess talking about swiping the itch with a magic stick. So he's being rushed into surgery again. What's up with Albie's wife, y'all? Because Albie's wife, Laura, was lingering around and looking at things and something about her seems a little sneaky. It's giving a little bit of Rhonda vibes to me. So his mother is losing it, and she keeps telling Albie to fix it. Meanwhile, Albie has something else to worry about because he gets a phone call while he's at the hospital that Bill is making a play. So apparently Bill has went to Juniper Creek. He's called a meeting with the council. He doesn't say it outright. Sounds like he was trying to take over the UEB to me in Robin's absence because he's suggesting that the board appoints an interim trustee to fill the shoes of the chairman, which is Bill, to pick a man from outside the compound who is a good businessman to do the job. You know, someone who is familiar with accounting and, you know, things of that nature because there's too much money floating around, etc. As he's saying this, Albie interrupts the meeting, saying that they shouldn't be doing this without his father, that Bill is trying to push their profit into a cold grave. Bill says the UEB is a corporation, and one of the council members who is in the corner, who also happens to be blind, says that this isn't out of a business, this is a religion. With him being blind, part of me wonders if there's some symbolism in that, because is he blind to the fact that this is a corrupt religion? Is he blind to the fact that they are in essence running a corporation? Like, what does there's a reason why out of all people they had him say it, is what I'm wondering. So Albie ends up getting dismissed. And before he leaves, he says, he's watching you all. And it's so dramatic. Like he's like pointing to all the guys in the room. Bill thinks he has the upper hand, but he doesn't. Because as usual, when it comes to some of these families, the women, in my opinion, are much smarter than the men, and they get it done. We'll get to it. So Nikki is laying on the couch watching TV. It's obvious that Nikki is going through it because Nikki does not look like Nikki. Barb comes in with the egg sandwich for Nikki, acting like she's concerned. But as I said earlier, I think she's there for herself. Nikki says her father is in intensive care. Barb's like, I feel terrible for you. But do you, Barb? Because the way she said that, she feels sorry for her. And then in 0.2 seconds, she then switches it up to the conversation that she had with Bill. And why she's really over there, to me, shows that she really doesn't care. She has her butt on the coffee table and she's crushing the ice that she got from out of Nikki's freezer. Don't sit on my table. I don't like that. She says Bill told her about this business venture and she doesn't feel like they're ready for it. Nikki's stance is, if we can make more money, why wouldn't we want to do it? And Barb is smiling like she got this information firsthand. And she tells her, you know, when you hear the details, you probably won't feel that way. And Nikki's like, let me pop that bubble right quick, Barb. She's like, you know, Barb, I don't mind if it's gambling. And Barb is like there's a noticeable change in Barb, because Barb has now realized that she isn't the first to know, because she just found out that morning when they went golfing. I don't know why, but it tickled me. Seeing the change in Barb tickled me, because in the beginning I like Barb, but Barb does things that make me feel like Barb feels like she's better than. I really didn't like the way that she interacted with Lois. We'll get to it. She just gives off these I'm better than you vibes. So Nikki says, you know, my father always says that there's no sin in taking money from sinners. When did you find out, is what Barb wants to know. And Nikki's like, you know, Bill told me yesterday or the day before. Basically making sure that, you know, Barb knows I knew before you. She's like, you aren't always the first to know, Barb. And Barb's like, I know. That's fine, I know. But really, her face is saying otherwise. Barb, you got to work on your poker face, girl, because it's not giving it. So she leaves. And when she left, I typed, good for Nikki. Ben. Ben is taking his priesthood seriously, but there's some underlying stuff there, in my opinion, especially because the things that he's been taught are so wrong. His third mother at one point has done, and they were okay for her to do. Parents, do not preach abstinence to your kids if you're not willing to be honest about the choices that you've made along the way. All right? You can't say, I need you to abstain and don't do this and don't do that. If you are honest and say, hey, I may not have abstained and this is why I feel like you should, because when I didn't, this and that happened, right? Because it makes you seem like a hypocrite. So Margie comes to Home Plus to do the shopping that Nikki would normally do when she runs into Greg. Apparently, Greg is a sales manager that is extremely happy to see her because she used to date him. He hugs her and he's excited to see her and he's shocked. And you can tell she's shocked too, and she's a little uncomfortable. So they talk a little bit, and as she walks away, because she's like, bye, Ben, bye, Greg, he raises his two fingers and is like, diddly do, diddly do. And I said, what in the world is that? Is that some type of sexual reference? Because Greg was doing a lot of weird stuff, right? So he's like, Ben, how do you know her? And Ben's like, she used to be, she used to babysit me and my sisters. Every time I think more and more about the situation with Margie and Bill, I think about how sick this thing is, because I do not believe that she was legal age. And if she was at the cusp, like she might have been 18, which to me, Bill, with kids, the age that they are, being so close in age to her, that's weird to me, okay? I also feel like Bill created this job in his home for Margie. Why exactly? Was this the plan all along? Because I don't think that a babysitter was needed. Where was Nikki? Why couldn't she watch the kids? It's not adding up to me because of the kids' ages and because of how Margie acts and because it sounds like the guy Greg was in his early 20s. So something's not adding up. So Greg's like, oh, she used to babysit you. Did she spank you? And then he starts bragging, about how all the guys in the store, just wanted her. They all wanted her. But, out of all of them, I had her. Talking about her like a piece of meat isn't okay. So I was glad Ben did what he did next. Because he says that, Greg does, Margie was the best piece of sass, take off the S, that he ever had. Ben ends up pushing him into a display and walking off. I say, yay, Ben. Good for Ben. He deserved it. Because Bill should have known enough about his son to understand that he would not push this man into a display for just any reason. I get it. You can't walk around putting your hands on people. However, he was more concerned to me about not knowing what Margie did than hearing out his son, because there's a point where he calls him in the office and tells him he has to apologize. And Ben's like, well, do you want to know what he said? Do you want to know the things that he said about her? He dated her. Do you want to hear what else? And he's like, no. So he doesn't ever get the full details from Ben. But if your son went as far as to push this guy, there's obviously something that was said that would be a cause for concern. But he don't want to know. Margie goes outside, sees Bill, and he takes his time to work on her. He asks her if she thought about, the company that he told her about, and he does this whole pitch about gambling, and he's talking in circles about how some people say it's bad, and she's like, it is bad. One of my aunts or something lost, I can't remember, she said they lost their house or something, but they lost something to gambling. And he's like, and some people say, it's a form of entertainment, but the company that I mentioned to you, it's not gambling, it just makes the machines. And Margie is at the point where she seems to be used to the spin that he does. So she says, Bill, what is it that you want me to think about it? Meaning she knows that he's having this conversation with her because he wants her to side with him. He she's like, what do you want me to say? Do you want me to do this? And he was like, well, Nikki liked it and it made me really happy. She says, okay, fine by me. If that's what we want, then it makes me happy. He then gets behind her and slaps her on the butt and thanks her for shopping at Home Plus. I guess we're not going to act like that scene isn't another example of the way that these men manipulate these women, and another example of how these women are treated like objects. And I'm not saying guys don't walk around smacking their women on their butts. They do. I get it. I've had it done. So it's not like that's not a thing, but it was something about the way that it was done and about the whole spanking comment that it just, when he did it, I didn't like it. Later in the episode, Margie visits the store again, but this time because the fans that she bought previously were the wrong size. And Greg ends up being the one that helps her, and he's inappropriate again as she walks away. I think he had a ruler or something, and he was like hitting himself with it. Ben notices this and accuses her of flirting. He makes a scene, and he talks to her like she is his peer rather than like a mother figure. He then lies by telling her that Bill does not want her to visit the store anymore because she's messed with the people that he's worked with. She tells Ben, Bill understood that I had dated other men before marrying him, and he's fine with it. Let's be clear. That's because Bill doesn't realize that you slept with the guy. I feel like the priesthood title seems to make these young men feel like they are above all women, which is the same way that Bill approaches things with the women in his life. By the end of the episode, we know that Bill didn't realize anything happened because he went from telling Ben to apologize to Greg for what he did to calling Don and saying, can you change Greg back to the store that he used to work at and give him a raise, so we don't have any problems. Because Margie assumed that Ben told Bill what he knew, and she let it slip out that she wasn't into the spanking that Greg was. So now because of that, and he has that image in his head, he wants Greg out the store. Back to Nikki. Y'all, I'm all over the place because this was all over the place, so just bear with me. Nikki attempts to patch up things with her mother, right? So she rents a truck. She steals Marge's deep freezer that is full of ground meat from Margene's garage. And she attempts to gift it to her mother. She's begging to agree with her, and her mother says no. And her mother tells her that she doesn't like that Nikki is using this as a way to get back in, that she's turning tragedy to her advantage. But I don't think that's what she's doing. Nikki is like, I'm just trying to support you. Why won't you let me in? Her mom says, I don't want your support. Your father has a fever and psychosis and an infection, and all you're thinking about is yourself. In my opinion, that's not fair because Nikki very much so is thinking about more than herself. In spite of being treated poorly at times by her parents, she loves them. She loves the compound. She loves the community. She misses it. Most of the episode, the girl looks like she's on, I don't want to say her last leg, but it's obvious she's sad and she's depressed and she looks drained and she looks rough. And she's very much so normally well put together, and her hair in this scene is blowing in the wind and it's all over her face and she just looks stressed. So her mother tells her that she can't bear to be around her. She brings her nothing but heartache and she hurries back into the house. I don't think that has anything to do with this situation. I think it's because of what Nikki divulged to her mother and she can't handle it. I think that there's something there that we don't know about, and I can't wait till we find out why the dynamic with Nikki and her mom is the way that it is. Because Nikki already told us in previous episodes that her mother didn't really mother her, that the other mothers did. So why was it that she didn't have that connection with her mom? So when her mother refuses to take the refrigerator or allow her inside to see her sisters, Nikki does something that I didn't expect her to do. She gets in the rental truck and she circles the freezer and she rams it. Her mother says, "What are you doing?" and she backs up the vehicle and she rams it again. I said, okay, everybody in that family is crazy, because Albert was doing that thing where he was hitting the wall, and now Nikki is taking out her frustration on the freezer. She goes back home and acts like nothing even happened. When Margene questions her about it, she's basically like, I gave my mother that, my mom needed it, leave me alone about it. Let's go to my girl Lois. Lois continues to have so many layers, you guys, that I'm still like, ugh. So Lois calls Bill seeking financial support. But Bill is upset with her because she's, in his words, recklessly revealed his business plans to Frank. He feels like she sold him down the river, which is rich coming from Bill, right? Because Bill sells people down the river every chance that he gets. Interesting that he's allowed to do it to other people, but other people can't do that to him, right? When he gets a dose of his own medicine, he throws tantrums. And I love Lois's response to him. Oh, add me to your pity parade. Your father duped me too. He cleaned me out. When I say that one of the things that I love about Lois's character is how quickly she goes from one extreme to the next. Like 1 minute she's going to be all sorry and the next she's going to be like snarky. Like she's going to flip back and forth. And here's the thing. He doesn't realize that Frank literally cleaned her out, because we see her on this phone and in her living room and all of the furniture is gone. I don't know if she did rent to own or if he actually took the furniture out of her home. The only thing that I know is all that's in her living room now is a lawn chair. So he refuses to lend her money. So she calls Sarah, gets directions, and comes to visit Sarah at Scott's apartment. But she doesn't realize that this is a guy's place. She just thinks it's a friend's place. So she comes in and she offers Sarah her fur, and she's talking about how bad things are at the compound. And she's over there trying to act all innocent, saying she doesn't understand why Bill is mad at her, when we know she knows why Bill is mad at her. But Lois is on a mission to get some help or sympathy. She says she doesn't understand what Frank has done to Bill to make him upset with her. The gullible act disappears for a split second, though, when Scott walks in from his run, because he has his arms out and his legs out, and she's realizing that she's in this man's apartment, this much older man's apartment. So then she resumes her act, and she says she's a victim because Frank left her with nothing. Scott then, in his own way, ends up empowering Lois, because he's like, if Frank's your husband, you can sue him. You're entitled to support. And she's like, say more. He says Utah is a community property state, which means you own a piece of everything that he's got. This information causes Lois to look into some things. Before she does that, Lois calls Bill. No, not Bill. She calls Barb. I don't know why I wrote Bill. And lets her know that she needs to be more concerned about Sarah and the company she's keeping. I actually agree, because she's 18, in this grown man's apartment, and she seems to be very comfortable in there. She says, I'm not trying to intrude on a family, that I've been written out of. And Barb is sounding like she's annoyed. She's feeling like this is a ploy for her to get something. I'm not acting like Lois doesn't always have an angle, but sometimes there's a reason for Lois doing some of the things that she's done. Lois has been through a lot. So she's coming to Lois a little condescendingly to me, right? She has that tone. And she's, talking to her like, Bill accepts him and yada, yada, yo. And she's like, for your information, her boyfriend is old enough to have a third wife. And if he hadn't gone and slung her a calf already, he's about to. Barb keeps on about how he's respectful and mature and he was a nice young man. And Barb annoys me because Lois is like, okay. In other words, you can believe him if you want to. She says he can say all of that, but he doesn't know what I walked in on. And then she ends the call. which gets Barb's mind racing. Later on, while at Juniper Creek, we see Lois confront Bill about Frank. Because Lois has listened to Scott and she went to go look into things. And it turns out that Frank has another life that Lois doesn't even know about. Oh, no, they're not on the phone. They're right across from each other. She said, did you know your father was a partner in Witty Construction? He says no. She said, did you know that he owned a janitorial supply company, a Kentucky Fried Chicken outlet? The years I spent in so-called poverty, me on food stamps, I just bet you didn't know. Bill's like, I didn't. She says, well, I don't believe you. I bet the two of you rats were in cahoots. I found something else in your father's papers. And she pulls out a copy of the check. $6,500 for services rendered marrying Lois. I want a divorce. And he's telling her, you crazy. You don't need a divorce. You wouldn't even know how to begin a divorce. Like, he's talking down to her too. Like his mom isn't smart, or like she can't figure out things for herself. And she's like, yes, I do. I went and found a book and it has forms in it and it has the things in it for me to fill out. You think that I'm just some stupid old woman and you hate me. And she gets a little, you hear her voice crack as she says it, and she gets in the car and she pulls off. What bothered me most about this scene though is your mother was just blindsided with this information. She already told you, she lied about the amount, but she already told you that your father took over $20,000 from her. And not only did he take the $20,000 from her, but this entire time she's been living in poverty while he's had all of these other businesses that she knew nothing about. And he's lied to her all these years, which goes back to the fact that that's what a lot of these guys do, because a lot of them were living in different states with different wives, had different businesses, and women don't know about it. And they are on food stamps and they are going from check to check. And even with the food stamps in the book that we're reading now, they even have to share it with their other wives. Or the first wife gets this versus the other wife. Like, it's a lot to this thing. And he hears this and he doesn't even think to come for his mother. Bill is selfish. So Barb, after the information that she got from Lois, takes the information and decides she wants to talk to Sarah. So she asks Sarah, more about, her man. And she tells her, like, how mature is he? Your dad says he's mature. How mature is he? And she's like, he's 28. I met him at an ex-Mormon group. And she's like, an ex-Mormon group? And Barb tries to act like she's going this, this route because of some of the stuff that's going on in the compound and because of some of the immoralities of the house, like talking about her son. Sarah lets her know, look, this house, despite what you believe, because as I said, Barb thinks she's better than everybody, despite what you believe, isn't much different from the compound, because all of you women settle for less than you deserve. I said, wow. That is a fact. Sarah tells her mom that just because Ben has an overactive hormones doesn't mean that she and Scott can't control themselves, because she's asking her if she's having sex. She says Mormons don't have a monopoly on morality. And she's right. And I said these kids continue to show how much more emotionally intelligent they are than their parents. We later see Barb talking to Heather's father, telling him that she actually wants her daughter to be LDS, and she feels like Heather would be a good influence for her. And she takes her hand and puts it over this hand, like as she's talking. In other words, let your daughter be friends with my daughter, because I'm hoping your daughter pulls my daughter away from her boyfriend, and I don't want my daughter to get caught up and have sex the way my son did. He tells her he'll think about it. He needs to talk to his wife first. Let's go to Joey. So Joey calls Bill to let him know that their mother was booked, arrested, and then later released on her own recognizance. She broke into Frank's house, dislocated Nita's shoulder, locked her and the other wives in a room downstairs, ransacked Frank's house looking through his records and papers. That's why she was able to get the papers and tell us what was on the papers. I really wish they showed it to us. So Bill calls her a crazy old woman. Were you calling your father a crazy old man when he did the stuff that he did? Not really. Bill once again claims that he's trying to give his mother tough love. Joey brings up the UEB situation and asks why he's pushing this so hard. Joey then says, "You didn't have anything to do with this shooting with Roman, did you? Because I know you were talking a lot with the Greens." Bill always thinks that he has the upper hand on everything. And that's why when he comes to the compound and he sees once again this situation flipped, I was laughing. So we find out also that Joey is letting Kathy move in to test things out between her and Wanda because he, unlike Bill, only has one house. We see Wanda and Kathy having a great time bouncing on the workout ball, doing things together and moving Kathy in. And Bill is trying to come down on him, saying he doesn't agree with it. You shouldn't be shacking up. Bill, I feel like you need to shut up. He tells him, look, I don't want to commit to anything if they're not going to get along. I think that that's smart. I think it's smart to test things out a little bit and see what happens, but to each his own. After sitting in the office, being concerned about the finances, we see Nikki's mom having a breakdown. She wrote the deposit for various places where money is supposed to go. But she doesn't understand how it's supposed to be divided because her husband, the prophet, always told her how to do it. So she's in the office worried about it, worried about what's going to come of them. And Albert says, I can take care of this because I believe in my heart that Juniper Creek should be led by our family. I pray and I pray for your father's recovery, she says. Still, he needs someone to assist him in his hour of need. Albie quickly understands what she's saying, which basically, because they have a little conversation, is that in order for him or for Roman to keep their position, the Grants, he's going to have to get a revelation from God. And you see him look down at a hat on a desk. And I didn't understand the significance of the hat, right? But we're going to get to it. So the UEB meeting that Bill was supposed to have where he thought he had all these signatures and he was going to get this thing done for himself or somebody else to be appointed, it gets canceled because Albie has successfully convinced the members that he should replace Roman. Albie enlists the help of his mother. He calls Nikki and others around the compound to say that he's the next prophet. Well, he doesn't call Nikki. Nikki calls him. Albie then acts like Joseph himself, which I didn't understand what it was. I had to go look it up. Apparently, through a hat and a rock, they called it, I can't remember what it was called when I looked it up, something with an S. He stares into it, or Joseph Smith at one point stared into it to get the Book of Mormon. So it's a seeing stone that he's looking into, and he holds his head, up and looks down and does all of this while saying these random things, including him being the next prophet before and after Roman. He then comes to acting like he didn't know what he said. And his mother says she watched his face change earlier from his own to Roman, then to Joseph Smith. And just like that, Bill is watching as the people are convinced. Yet another example of how people like Warren Jeffs were able to get in their roles because you fake a couple of prophecies, you have a couple of witnesses, and you're in. Albie uses the trappings of religion and faith to get what he wants, and his mother and others help him. My question is, what do they get from it? What do the people who back these men get from it? During this, Nikki makes a move. We'll talk about it. Back to Bill in his house. Bill is still trying to get his way, even though he's already gone through the process of rolling out this new business without talking to his wives. During dinner, Barb lets everyone know she was the last to find out, and the fact that she keeps talking about it shows how bothered she is. Nikki and Barb are vocal as always about what they want, with Nikki siding with Bill and Barb not, meaning Margine is the deciding vote. Nikki confronts Barb about going golfing. Margie is experiencing morning sickness and puking in the bags. Barb and Margie discover that Bill already bought Weber Gaming. So he's over there acting like their vote and their decision matters, but he's already taking certain steps because Bill makes certain decisions for everybody, even Don. Because at one point, Don's like, what if they don't approve? And he's like, we always got to ask them this and tell them this when really they just need to do what we want them to do. Very Cody-ish of him. So first, Bill lied to Barb and made her feel like she was the first to know about the business. And now he lied about already making the decision. So this upsets Margene and Barb because he didn't consider them first. But in my opinion, as I said earlier, he never considers them. So Barb gets up from the table and says, remember, Bill, there is a patriarch above you. He's called our Heavenly Father, and I don't think he looks too kindly on you, putting your wives and family in bed with gangsters, guns, and gambling. Whether he admits it or not, that is exactly what he is doing. Because how else do you describe what has happened with Hollis's group and Roman over this whole game situation? To convince them, he decides that they need to take a trip to the casino to understand this. Barb's still not convinced. So before they go to the casino the day before, Nikki and Barb have a whole exchange about the priesthood and all these other things. And Nikki at one point is referring to how you got to let a man be a man, or he'll do things like what she read where he'll get breasts for his chest and just stuff that's all over the place, right? So Bill takes his wives to the casino to see what he wants to purchase. Nikki seems eager, in my opinion, to find something to take her mind off her father. Barb is clearly the only person who is apprehensive about this deal. We see Margene playing strip poker, where an image of the lady taking off her clothes appears whenever she wins the hand, and Barb is saying things like, oh my Jesus, at the sight of it. While Nikki whispers things to Marge like, that lady looks like you from behind. I got to say, Nikki is normally the uptight one, but I always enjoy watching her experience different things and seeing her kind of let her hair down. So Nikki, why do I keep calling her Nikki? Nikki gleefully wanders through the aisles of slot machines and ends up at the bingo station because she's watching as numbers are called and letters. And the lady asks Nikki if she could watch her cards while she goes to the bathroom. And what do you know? Nikki wins, and she's so excited to say bingo. Like, her smile is like bingo, and everybody claps for her, which is great. So Barb complains that despite what Bill is saying, paying $30 for a cup of coffee to get chips makes it clear that this place isn't right. She says that the establishment is illegal under Utah's law and that what they say as wives should matter too. Bill is telling her it's not a casino at all. It's a gaming establishment, and it just goes to show the murky waters of it all. They decide that they're going to take a vote later. Let's get back to this whole Albie situation. So as I said, Albie had that whole meeting where he did the rock bull. Before that, he called Nikki and told her he needed her support, right? He lets her know he's having a meeting in the afternoon and everybody's going to be there. Now, I was thinking that Nikki was excited to know that everyone was going to be there so she could hurry up and go to the compound and see them. But that's not why Nikki was excited. Nikki was excited because Bill told her earlier about money being all over the UEB office and that Albie wouldn't know what to do with it. So what she does is, while everybody is at the meeting to witness what Albie's about to do, she goes to the UEB office and steals a whole bunch of money. Like, it's wads of thick, like I'm ready to go to the bank money. During a conversation, I told you about the whole thing with Bill. She then takes that money to the casino and uses it to play bingo. So she went from one addiction to another. She went from shopping to gambling. Is it the trauma of what Nikki's, been through that's making her do this with her father? Or is it something else? Like, what problem does Nikki have that she keeps on having these addictive behaviors? So back at home, the Henriksons finally vote. And to Barb's surprise, Margie supports Bill and Nikki's position because of something that Barb said earlier when she thought she was convincing her to side with her, when really what she was, because she kept talking about the kids this and the kids that, was that she was making Margene realize that they need more money for her kids. She says that she needs the financial security for her kids, that at this point, your kids are older, her kids are younger, and she wants to make sure that by the time that, it gets to her kids, that there's still money there. Kind of reminded me of Robin for a second. Bill says, we won't let this divide us, but it's clear that Barb isn't happy. Overall, in this episode, I think we saw Margie come into her own, as she was able to be the swing vote, having the power that her mother told her that she has. But I feel like this may change the dynamic if she gets to see what her power is, because it's only so long that you're going to want to please Bill. I think something else that's interesting is that you can see the wind getting pulled out of Barb's sails, as her position as the first wife doesn't have all the perks that she thought it did. It seems like every week something else is happening, and every week she's going to outside sources in order to try to figure things out. I think that this is going to be very, very interesting, because the way that Barb looked at the end of that vote seemed like there's going to be something else going on here, because Bill got what he wanted, but at what expense? Y'all let me know what you thought of this episode. If there's something that I left out that you want to talk about, feel free to put it down below. Like the video, as it helps the channel. Until next time.